data is getting more and more key in new office spaces, and collecting it from now on is crucial to make the next step into your new hybrid office space.
Welcome back, everybody, to a new episode of the GoBright Vodcast. In this episode, we are joined by Wesley from OCS Plus, who will tell us all about the return on investment of a smart working environment. Wesley, maybe you can tell a little bit about yourself and the company that you work at, OCS Plus?
Yes, of course. My name is Wesley. I'm responsible for OCS Plus, one of the largest office furniture suppliers and office integrators in Netherlands. I'm since 5 years the managing director for the company, and worked before in several roles from sales into marketing, and working on a daily basis with the larger customers, corporate customers in Netherlands and other countries to integrate new hybrid offices.
That's awesome. Well, the subject today, as we've heard, is the return on investment of a smart working environment. So I'm pretty sure you can tell us a lot about that today. Of course, we're also joined by Chris once more, commercial director at GoBright. I should know your introductory story by heart now, but maybe maybe you can repeat yourself one more time for us.
Well, I'm still Chris, so didn't change in the meantime. But anyway, yes, since 2018 at GoBright. And all the years before, I've been always in large offices, so I understand. I think the dynamics of what's happening there, and also see all the changes. So it's a very exciting time now to meet all the experts, as even Wesley today. So thank you very much for coming. And let's make a good story of it.
Nice. So as per usual, the podcast is Vodcast. Sorry, I should say. We also have viewers. It's going to be divided up into two halves. In the first half, I would like to dig deep into the types of investment that people can do in an office space. That might be a bit of a mystery to some people. Like, of course, there might be a budget, but how do I spend it? And what do I do? In the second half, we're going to talk about the return on that investment, which obviously is the main subject of this podcast, knowing how that money then can come back. And is it just money that comes back, or is there also indirect ways of getting that return? We're going to find out today, but let's start with the types of investments. I usually like to start with a statement, just to see if you agree or disagree, or maybe both. The first statement is, the only way to get a return on my investment in the office space is by scaling it down. Is that true, Wesley?
So from one point of view, there's a lot happening at this moment in the office market. Companies are looking for opportunities to whether to scale down or to optimize their offices. So since we work on a daily basis with different kinds of customers, it always depends on the type of people and the type of function people have. Sometimes that means that by changing the hybrid office or the traditional office into a hybrid office, it could mean that you need to scale down your office, since people might be working from home. 54% of the people are working from home at least 2 days in a week on average at this moment in Netherlands. So there's a chance that offices will be scaling down in the future. But on the other hand, optimizing offices in where people can meet and can socialize and can, find each other again, it means an other type of office than we had pre-COVID.
Right.
So that means optimizing an office instead of only putting workstations in it, a different way of working. Right. So it doesn't necessarily have to mean that you need to scale down, but to optimize it can also be a solution to look into.
I think that's very interesting, because I do have this idea, speaking for myself, that the first connotation I made when thinking about hybrid working is, as you say, people are not in the office as much, so therefore you can scale down and that's it. But as we'll definitely go in more in depth in the other ways that you can get an ROI, and that scaling down might not even be the option for you as a manager. What impact, you already mentioned pre and post COVID a little bit there. What impact because post COVID, obviously hybrid working has been uprising a lot. You just mentioned 54% of the people work from home at some point on average.
At least 2 days a week, yeah.
Yeah, which is 40% of your work week. What impact does hybrid working have on the way you at OCS Plus furniture office spaces or deal with office spaces?
So what we noticed, so pre-COVID, we have been working already in the market for over 25 years and have been working also before COVID in, let's call it open workspaces or new ways of working. But what we notice, especially after COVID, is that people are more often working from home. People work from different spaces, let's say third spaces, instead of the actual office. And the conclusion from that, what we noticed, is that the offices aren't, most of the time, not ready for now, for the new ways of working. So that means we have traditional offices post-COVID, since they are only prepared now for pre-COVID times. So we need to update their offices, or we need to drastically change something within the office so they are prepared for future. And this is the question many people ask us every day, like, how are we going to attract people again back to the office? And how are we going to make the next step into, let's say, the future of work, especially for Gen Z or the new next generation?
Right.
So these are the questions we get quite often.
Yeah.
And how are we going to implement this or help people and companies with it?
Yeah. Is there anything specific that is different now than it was before COVID? Something you run into a lot?
I think one of the nice metaphors I always use is when we went for governmental buildings or whatsoever, we always saw people working from there, focusing on their daily task, individual work. And what we see now every day is people can use, everywhere in the world, we can use Teams or Zoom or whatever app to work from home remotely to do these individual tasks. And what we see now that drastically changed is we come to the office not to work individually anymore for 8 hours a day, but we go to an office to meet, to socialize, also to focus, but just for a certain amount of time. And most of the time we try to, combine the meetings with our colleagues, also to have certain tasks during a day. Right. So spend your time well in the office, think wisely, not to go only on a Tuesday or Thursday, as we already noticed on the highways at this moment. So think about also the culture and behavior that people have in the office, and that really changed in just a few years.
Wow. Yeah. So I can imagine that also has a huge impact on the way you guys work, right? Because you want to facilitate for that new need, I guess, that employees have. So people might be wondering, I'm a manager, I have an office space. Sure, it was prepared for pre-COVID. Now we have hybrid working, but we have stable internet connection. We gave everyone laptops, so they're not bound to like a desktop computer
anymore. Yeah.
Why would I invest in my office space? What would you answer to that question?
So one of the basic things that we noticed, and that's what I as a manager also noticed, is to hire new people. People need to feel the attraction towards a brand or towards a certain office or towards your team. And without an office, I'm just working on a monthly paycheck for a certain brand, and I get it every month. See it from home. See, this is the brand where I'm working for. But an actual office provides a space where people feel like a family or feel like home. And in the end, everybody needs a certain, let's say, office culture. And in the end, office culture is not from your desk at home, but happens when you are in an actual home base or actual office. So I'm certain that every company needs an actual office, and not stating that you shouldn't work from home, but absolutely there is something needed as a home base for all of your employees to come together, whether it's let's say a flexible office like we see at this moment very, very often, or an actual office where based like as the company itself.
Yep. Yeah, and I think that here also lies the answer, is that an office will always be there. Another question for another podcast could be, hey, is an office needed or not anymore?
Exactly, yeah.
From my perspective, and you said that too, it's definitely there, and it's not how it was, but it should be better than it was before.
Right.
That's the importance. And the main thing is identity, I guess. So you can call it culture or identity. So how can I be proud of the company that I work for if I don't know how it looks like?
Absolutely.
How can I be proud of the company I work for if I don't know how it smells, how it tastes, whatever? If I don't meet my colleagues, what is our culture anyway if I'm not there, I'm not part of it? So instead of thinking that the office is not significant anymore because we have our own office, I think the role is extremely more important than it was before. Only it has a different role.
Absolutely.
That's the main point.
Right. Right. So that also brings us back to the point where, the big assumption is I can scale down, which again is that very pragmatic approach of the office space. Less people are in, less space is needed. That's the end of the story. But that there's more to it than that. It's complexer than that, from what I understand. You just mentioned, that scaling down might be optimizing, but you also want to improve upon an office space, right? And not just be stuck in that whole loop of just scaling it down. Could you give some concrete examples of how people can improve their office space? What does that entail in this new hybrid working environment?
So for us, as a design and build company, OCS Plus provides concept design and build, where we provide workshops up front to know what people are doing within the office in a new situation. So with the thinking that an initial thought is shrinking down their office or scaling down the office is the best solution, we always provide the questions in a form of a workshop where we ask people, how do they work nowadays? How do they want to work? Is the need there to have an actual office, or what's the daily, let's say, business they do at an office? And how can we combine this with different departments working together, like sales and marketing are quite often combined in work, like finance and HR, it's the same. Knowing how teams work nowadays, we provide them a concept and design by our own interior architects. So we get them a feeling of how an office should look like and could look like. So it depends on what the people are doing during a day.
Right.
We provide them a space that actually works for them. Thinking about spaces that provide socializing areas, provide spaces where you can, have meetings, have a work cafe where you can work from and not only use it between 12 and 2 to have just some lunch. But
Multifunctional room, right?
It's more multifunctional than before.
Right.
So one of the things we do is provide offices and concept and designs before we even think about what type of furniture or what type of space you need. But it's more about the concept and design where people literally can feel better in and work better in.
Right. Right. So the message to any managers that might be listening to this is, you need to know what's going on in your office space.
Absolutely.
I would say,
and provide always spaces that gives people choice and control to work there, where you can excel as best as you can during a day. So give people the choice to work from where they can work best.
Right. And how, because that might be quite a difficult thing to sort of grasp and measure, I would say, because you might have a gut feeling of things that make your people excel, but how would we measure this? How do we, let me just rephrase this question. Before people come to OCS Plus, what data, what information do you think is crucial for them to have about their office space?
Well, data is becoming more and more important, and by having an architectural, like a building, furniture combined with technology, we are certain that by providing our services together, we know that the technology measures the data, how people are working within an office. We can literally measure warmth, presence. We can know how many people are working from a certain room. By having these information up front, and that can be nowadays quite easily to measure it before at point zero and after, we know exactly how people are working during a day and what moments we need to focus on to improve that space. So data is getting more and more key in new office spaces, and collecting it from now on is crucial to make the next step into your new hybrid office space. And that's where we can help in, not only on the, let's say, the soft side, but also on the hardware side to provide these types of data.
Yeah.
That's what we call a data-driven office.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's not to take measures or to make changes in your office. It was always be done on assumptions, and those assumptions could be right, of course. So it's not a bad thing, but it's still assumptions. So, and we're going to talk about investments in this podcast, right? So, if you want to make investments, the most important thing is, can I earn it back, right?
Yeah.
And what justifies that I will earn it back, and what proves it to me, and that's where data comes in. So, it could be an instant process to make your decisions on and say, okay, now I'm going to make these changes. But we already said in the former podcast that this process of changes will be continued probably for multiple years now.
Yep.
It's not that we now have the final concept. So to make sure you stay ahead of the curve, you need to have a system which provides you data on every requested moment. Right. And that will give you the ability to make not assumptions, but to make decisions based on data. Facts.
And then in addition to that, it's the best investment or the worst investment is building a new office, not knowing what to do, and just providing some nice looking office furniture in it with some walls, some new ceilings, some new carpets, and then people won't come to the office at the end of the day. That's the bad investment you can do. Yeah. You spend a lot of money without having the data, without asking people what they want and how they work during a day. So thinking about that, the best ROI, let's say return on investment, is ask your people what they want, collect it with data, combine it, and see how they can literally improve an office instead of just putting in nice furniture.
Right.
And thinking about the next step of how people want to work instead of nice things.
Yep. So I guess the idea here is also that where in the past an office space was quite a general place, like you just mentioned, it was mainly workstations. It was like almost like it might not sound too nice, but almost like a giant storage unit for computers and desks where people could have a place to work. That changed, and now an office space needs to be more personalized towards people's needs. You can obviously ask them, but I do wonder, because you have to deal with many individuals, how to sort of get a good grasp of what people's behaviors are. Because if you ask people about their behavior, their answers might be different than actually knowing what they do. Chris, do you have ideas like how? Because I know obviously smart workplace solutions can help in this regard. I think a little bit. Could you elaborate a bit on that? On how the smart workplace solutions can help with knowing how your office space is used, basically?
Well, the big thing is that we already agreed on the fact that when you come to an office, you want to meet people. So working for 8 hours behind a desk, well, that's not why you go to the office. Mm-hmm. So if you have 1,000 people normally coming to the office, and it's now post-COVID maybe 400, how many desks do you need then in the end? Mm-hmm. So you could say, well, 400 because that's the average, which is there. Yeah. I dare to say you could maybe 200, 250 is enough. As long as you have a system which releases desks automatically at the moment that somebody leaves his desk. Because what's the behavior of people? They come in, they check into a desk, they're sitting there for an hour doing some emails, and then they go straight to the meeting room. And after the first meeting, they go to the restaurant, and then they come back for maybe an hour doing some email. So those 3 or 4 hours in between, somebody else could use that particular desk.
Yep.
This is just a simple example of what we do with our solutions. We make sure that it's released and somebody else can take it, can go on to the next one. So and that's what we call activity-based working. And you can elaborate more on that probably.
That's one of the things that we have the new systems and the new solutions post-COVID, but people that coming back to the office have still the mindset of pre-COVID. So coming to an office where they put their laptop on the table for 8 hours a day, that needs to be changed. So the culture or the behavior of people needs to change since the technology is ready. We know that, enabling an office or enabling a desk for 2 hours, we know that the workflow of people now, we have 2 hours of individual work and 2 hours of meetings. We go through an office during a day for 8 hours and not staying for 8 hours on a desk. So the technology is there. And I think we are ready for that. And then the behavioral part is one of the biggest things to improve now.
Yeah. Sometimes we compare it to a supermarket. Yeah. If you come into a supermarket, you're probably as a customer you're not aware of it. But the people from the supermarket, they have set out a route for you, which is quite interesting to them to sell you the best stuff, right?
Yeah,
so it's the customer journey through the supermarket.
Literally, yeah.
Activity-based working as a concept is exactly the same. So what is an employee experiencing when they come into the office, and what are they doing? So the first thing you do, for example, is stow your stuff away in a locker, because you only want to move around with your laptop
as light as possible.
As light as possible, and then you can move around. And by lights and traffic lights, you can see where you have to go or where something is available, and then you just move on.
Right.
So there is no place where you leave your coat on a chair or whatsoever. And if we could make this concept work more and more and more better in the future, then you come really down to downsizing your office space, because then you only have what you really need.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's one of the things that we are combining. So we are using, like, not everybody is like, for example, not everybody is like Google. Not everybody is like Microsoft. Every company is working differently. So what we do in concepts and designs, we make, let's say, one person a day at the office. That could mean that somebody is moving on a completely different way during a day than you or me. So that could be completely different for company A or company B. But knowing how they work and how they move during a day, or maybe even within teams, certain teams like marketing or sales or HR, they can move differently. But knowing exactly how they move, we can provide the right technology and integrated solutions to make them actually having that behavior, to act like it.
Yeah. To facilitate on those needs,
exactly.
Basically. Yeah. Wow, that's a very interesting approach. I think from what I understand, it really is facilitating towards needs instead of just facilitating to like a broad spectrum of needs. And again, the assumptions that you might have as a manager about how people behave and how people like to work at an office space. All right, so there's different ways that people can invest in their office, and I think that you've definitely explained pretty well why it can be very important. But there obviously is also a financial aspect to this. The title of this episode is the return on investment on smart working environments. And of course, that plays a role for various managers. The investment needs to be returned one way or the other. That brings me to my second statement. Investing in an office space can only have financial returns. Is that correct, or am I off there?
It's a good one. You want to start?
Yeah, I think you already gave the answer. If you have an inspiring workplace where people feel acknowledged, you can identify yourself with, it does something with your productivity.
Right.
Because if you're happy, it's much more fun to do your work. Coming to the office and meeting your people, getting inspired by your colleagues, collaborating, brainstorming, which you can't do probably via Teams, makes that you have fruit. You create something together. So, for my opinion, the first soft ROI is the productivity will grow.
Right.
Yeah. And the second one is attracting people.
Absolutely, but also the next generation, attracting people to the office back again. So the people that are already working for the office, for the company, but also new people, new hires.
Yeah.
How to make my company attractive again in the market, since there is a lot happening at this moment. People getting away from company A to jumping to company B.
Yep.
So how to attract and retain people within my company. One of the things is to provide such a space where people can excel, they can thrive, they can work with as much happiness as they can be.
Yeah.
And the biggest ROI indeed is productivity. But on the other hand, as already said, a nice looking office but not working with people in it is still a waste of money.
Right. Yep.
So think about space not as a must, but for people to attract in, but see an office as a place where people can meet and get their productivity done, and exactly. to have the happiness within their work.
Exactly.
And if you combine that with the remote tools that we have, like Microsoft Teams or Zoom or whatever, then you can also be very effective, because when you're in the office, you can still have an online meeting on a particular hour on the day. What do you think of traveling? I think that if you look to an average company, the traveling costs is a high cost. So if people are very dedicated to come to the office 1 or 2 days a week and they plan their whole day up front, it's very effective. So you could save a lot on traveling costs. If you know how to make sure that where people are in the office, and you can make sure that they are as much in the same space as possible, you can save a lot of money on cleaning, on energy, on lighting, and all kinds of stuff.
Control.
Yeah, so there are so many things that you can calculate what helps you to get the return on investment. I mean, maybe not a great example. Can I elaborate on 2 minutes on an example?
Yeah, of course.
A few years ago, we came to a medical healthcare in the Netherlands for mental health care, and they have these crisis teams. So if somebody totally mentally flips out, they have to come to a doctor and have to go into a room. So when we came there, it was in Amsterdam actually, the people told us, next week there will be these big containers and the whole inner garden we have here will be packed with all these containers. So why is it? Where is it for? Well, we want to make meeting rooms of that because we can't see if there is a doctor in this room. So if we have to burst in this room, are we not bursting into another conversation? Some mental problem. So we need more rooms. We said, how much does it cost? So there was a certain number. So what if I not only make sure that you don't have to pay that amount of money, but you will also save a certain amount of that? Would it be interesting? And they said, yeah, that's very interesting. So what we did is we just put in a room booking system and a sensor and a screen outside, which means if there's nobody in, the screen is green. If you have to go in, you take that room. The sensor said there's somebody there, so the screen goes on red, etc., etc. So if you leave, it goes back to green. That means that the rooms didn't have to be booked, so no secretary has to spend time. Every doctor could burst into a room, and they didn't hire any container anymore. And now they use 700 of those rooms equipped with our stuff, and they can easily work through all the patients that they need to all the different buildings they have. So it's a very simple solution, which saves them so much money and so much work and so much effectivity. So their return on investment is enormously. Because another thing is that if you normally book a room, you book it for an hour. But you don't know how long this patient will be in.
Could be 20 minutes, could be 40 minutes.
So it's 20 minutes. You leave the room, then it's occupied for 40 minutes.
That's the behavior. We book it for an hour, but we only use it for 20 minutes.
There you go. So in our reportings that we have, the analytics, you can see that you saved 40 minutes with that particular intervention. You save 23 minutes with that intervention. And the facility manager made these reports out of our system, went back to the CEO and said, look, this is what we save actually in hard numbers by implementing, in this case, the GoBright system.
Including the sensoring, since also behavior is not to press the stop button, but it automatically needs to go into, like it's intuition. You walk in and you walk out, but the sensor does the rest.
No human behavior.
Yes.
So the analytics give you the insights and the data to justify and explain if there is an ROI, and if so, what is it? That helps. That's a good example, I guess.
This is a very good example. I would say we talked about this right before we started the recording about the co-working space that I personally work at has a booking system. It's an online booking system and it works fine. But this, what you just explained, is like very much lacking in that regard for them, because I resonate with this heavily. Like I always book a room for at least an hour, because you're always going to be a bit scared if I only do it for half an hour. What if the meeting runs a bit longer and then I see the next person outside of the meeting room like, hey, I booked this from this time. So I guess it's very normal human behavior to want a little wiggle room. But then not being able to cancel that definitely, is not a positive ROI, I would say, or not positive on your ROI.
Same as with effectiveness or productivity is we always tend to book a larger room than we actually need. So one of the things is that what we noticed in the past, post-COVID, is people are always often booking rooms for like a 6-person room with only 2 person in it. And one of the things we noticed is most of the time we can shrink, let's say, or split up spaces by having this data, since we can measure it literally by the sensors that we are implementing. Knowing that some spaces can be split up into two types of 4 people, 2 of 3 people. And that's we see it quite often that now the meeting spaces are smaller, but are more effective used than before. Since we don't need, of course, those large spaces to occupy.
So then, to be very concrete, imagine you spend your money on 1 sensor and 1 partition wall, and then you have 2 meeting rooms.
Instead of hiring an extra space.
Which is €200 of course, per square meter per month. So this is a perfect example for an ROI. It's no rocket science.
Exactly. So it's knowing what's going on is, so the from what I understand is to get that good return on investment, you need to know that data so that you can make the right investment. Is that sort
exactly?
Like,
I was with a local community, a local council in the east of the and in the they want to implement this phone booth that you sell, right? These areas where you can sit in personally as a concentrated workspace, or with two or with four calls, or with 2 or with 4 people.
Yep.
And they were at that time approximately 50,000 units euros a piece. And they bought 2, and they told me, "Well, we want to have more, but we don't know how it's been used." I said, "Okay, that's clear in 2 weeks." Really? So yeah, we just put in the sensor. Cost 50 euros. Yeah, and after 2 weeks, they knew exactly how much the boxes were used.
Yep.
And then they saw that it was quite significant because they were probably used 80% of the day. It was very easy for them, to buy another 4.
Yep. Yeah.
Since you have a proven concept,
That's
you can prove it to your share or stakeholders. You can easily prove what the ROI is in this case. And when spaces are used quite often, it's easy math to.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, the process which was behind it is that they start talking to the people. Hey, why are you going to sit in these boxes? Well, these gardens that we're in are much too crowded and too noisy. So if you look around this room, you see these acoustic panels, for example. So what did they do? They know to improve now also the other office spaces to make sure that people not need to go to these small spaces.
Right.
And that's all because of the data.
All because of one sensor, I would say almost.
Well, it starts with one, but in the end, it's the data.
Exactly.
That shows you around, okay, what do you have to change? Be more effective, be more productive, make sure that people are more happy, which is mainly the most important thing from my opinion.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So this data is not just helping in choosing the right investment. It's also, from what I understand from your example, helping in asking the right questions, because now you know people's behavior and you can directly ask them about that behavior, as opposed to without any data. I would assume people just ask what the behavior is, which obviously gives a different answer than actually seeing what people's behavior is, if that makes sense. So I feel like if someone were to ask me how many times a day do you use the phone booth, I would just be like, yeah, I guess maybe 2, maybe 3 times. Like it's not something you consciously think about.
Nobody thinks about it. Nobody thinks about how many times a day do I have a call, or do I run into a promptu meeting. Nobody thinks about it. So the only way to actually prove it is by having data. And therefore, that's, as you said, we call it the data proven concept, to know exactly what people need without having actually them telling it. And of course, you always need to talk to people, but let them talk later after you gather the data, since then you can have a good conversation about it. Like, how do you want to work and how do you think you're actually working now? And then prove it by the data you have collected.
Yeah. Imagine another example. In a lot of larger organizations, you can, if you have a meeting, let's say that starts at 11 and stops at 2 o'clock, you can also order lunch with it. But what happens? People send an invitation via Microsoft Outlook, for example. They book the room via the GoBright solution, and then or just in Outlook, and then the meeting is in 2 weeks, for example. But something happens. So you've ordered your catering, you booked your room, and then what you do, you change the date from Monday till Friday, for example. You just swipe the meeting. But nobody thinks of the fact that you have to cancel your catering order.
Right.
So what happens a lot within companies, and when you're on visit in a company, you always can see it. There's always this little cart with lunches floating around somewhere, leftovers, and they put it in the canteen. Hey, if you don't have any lunch, take it. It's a waste. It's a waste of food. It's a waste of money. Yeah? So if you have a solution which connect those two to one another, if you shift the appointment from A to B, and that also the catering comes along, and also the visitor invitations comes along, then nobody has to think about it. Well, that's the tools that we develop, for example. So people who use these tools save a lot of money on this food and stuff. Yeah. So of course you have to invest in it, but the ROI is also there.
Yep, that makes sense. Yeah, before this we already briefly touched on if you cater your office space to the needs of the people that work there, it can also improve their productivity, their well-being, and therefore their productivity, or the other way around. Do you have like maybe a concrete or specific example of how investing in an office space can improve productivity?
Let's start with the beginning. I think one of the things that productivity comes from the people that actually work in. We need to exactly know how people work and how teams work together to provide them the best space to, let's say, entice productivity. So putting people together that work quite often together, that already makes it quite intuitive for them to actually look for each other, find spaces where they can collaborate by booking a room quite impromptu to like an informal meeting somewhere in the open or a formal meeting room, or find spaces where they can work together as a, how to call it, like an office cluster. When I'm looking for you in the morning, and I work quite often with Chris, for example, I will always tend to look for my colleague in the morning and looking for Chris in this case. So by sitting next to him, we can easily share data, we can easily share our presentation or preparation for our meetings, and that makes it easier for me to, instead of calling him or instead of working in teams with him. This creates also certain creativity, it's a certain time of collaboration that shouldn't have existed only via Teams. So by sitting next to him,
it saves you time. If you have to go up to the first floor to look if I'm there and I'm not there, you have to go to the second floor.
Yep.
Well, you're not just looking at your app and see, oh, he's on the third floor. So go straight
walking straight towards you, for example, and sit next to you within like 5 minutes. I exactly know in the building where you are.
There you go.
So productivity is not only by the output, but it's also by what provides me with the input of looking at my screen in the morning, where I'm going to, which meeting room has been booked. And it also feels comfortable for me not to having the rush to look for some spaces where I need to connect my laptop to the television, but going in, since most of the time, 20% of your meeting time is spent about looking for a space, and the other 20% is often connecting to AV or displays, and the other 60% is left over for that quick meeting you need to have. So by saving this amount of time,
productivity goes up.
Productivity goes automatically up.
Yep.
And next to productivity, there's also the illness rates, for example. The health of people is extremely important.
Yep.
So investing in your office environment to make it a very healthy and clean environment will help to get the sickness rates down. And we should ask an HR manager, but he will explain or she will explain that it takes a lot of money to pay for people who are sick.
Yeah.
So how do we do that? For example, well, we have desks who can go move up and down, so you can sit and stand in various ways during the day, which keeps you healthy. And if you make that more easy and more accessible for people, again, how can I find a particular desk like that? How can I use it? And make it so easy, people will intuitively do that and be more healthy. So another ROI on a good office environment is to keep your people healthy, which is a very important subject.
But also make people conscious that working only in a sitting or standing position during a day for 8 hours is not healthy for you. There are many solutions this moment at the market available also from GoBright that give you the consciousness, the idea of what should I do? Giving a little sign like, hey, use your sit-stand desk not only for sitting for 8 hours a day, but have different postures during your day, not only with a walk to your coffee machine or something, but also at your desk or at your meeting or in your meeting. Use that space also in more ways than only sitting. This is one of the things you also provide with GoBright as well.
Yeah, and I think in the end, although it's my experience that if people come in for a job interview, for example, the first thing I do is just look around. Is this an inspiring office? Is this somewhere that I want to be in the next coming years?
Right.
And the more suitable it is, the more proud they are of it, and the way that they probably talk to their friends about it will invite those friends. You should see my office, dude. It's nice. Yeah. So if you're looking for a job, come and visit my office, and you at least see what the reference is.
Wow.
And that helps to get in touch with other people. So For my opinion, we could make this podcast episode 2 hours, and we will come up with all kinds of ROIs because there's so much you can actually earn back on the investments you do on this.
It's at the core of your business almost.
And it's sometimes see that we have the early adapters who are already doing this before COVID already, who were very early like that. But there's so many organizations who are still hesitating. They find it difficult to give their people a laptop to be able to work from home. Well, if you're there, then I can imagine that this podcast sounds very revolutionary. Very, very, very far away from today.
Yeah.
But to those who are listening to that, don't be scared. It's not necessary because it is today.
It's already a proven concept. We have been working already for 5 to 7 years now. I think that's the time we have been working together already. Also pre-COVID, and there are already literally proven concepts in the market, and we have quite a lot of customers, happy customers working with it just by starting with some basic product, basic solution, and now after COVID, they're really happy they already started pre-COVID, since they already start a step ahead of their competition. This is also the beneficial for them, not only in productivity as the company, but also in comparison with the competition you are having, since everybody in the market has competition. And if you're only a little bit better than your competitor, you are a few steps ahead. Yeah. Also there's a beneficial.
And for those ones who are afraid of big investments, that's what you say now, start small. You don't have to think out the whole project all at once and do it all at once, but you can make a plan of enlarging or building.
Prototype, just test it by trial and error. It's like every day we are learning as well. So by starting small steps and thinking about how your space can improve by collecting data in the meantime, it's one of the best solutions to prototype with our customers as well. So.
Yeah, makes sense. To end the podcast here, one final question for you, Wesley. You work at OCS Plus for how many years now? You said
12.
12 years. So you know a thing or two about office spaces. It was actually quite funny when you just walked into this office space where we are currently. I introduced myself to you and we had a little chat, and then obviously the first thing that came to mind is, what do you think of this place? Made a little joke. It's like you're always on, maybe a bit, in a good way. It was a very broad question. You can answer this any way you want, but what makes a quote unquote good office space? How would you describe that?
Of course, it depends whether it's a space for multi-tenant or it's a single-tenant building. But one of the things that always attracts me when I'm coming in is looking around and thinking, where am I? Is this a company? Am I at? I can be at any office without seeing a logo or certain colors or color palettes. It could be in any general office. Walking in here, I'm not knowing where I am. Of course, this is a multi-tenant building, but it's always good to know where's the lady from the reception, giving me a warm welcome, offering a good cup of coffee, having the possibility to check in myself within my with customers, or walking in to look for my appointments. So by having the feeling that I'm feeling comfortable, that already gives you an idea of feeling safe, feeling welcome,
feeling at home, maybe.
Feeling at home as well.
Yep. Yeah. Nice. I'm actually quite surprised that a lot of it is very, very abstract. It's really a gut feeling thing then.
But I think 90% of everybody has it, but 90% of the cases we depend or we base our trust on gut feeling. Yeah. We are not always thinking about it, but our gut feeling is most of the time is right and giving a certain type of idea about how the space works, yes or no.
Exactly. Wow. Yeah, I think humans in general are obviously very space aware. So, you walk into a place and I can definitely imagine. Now that you say it out loud, I'm trying to think do I do the same thing? Probably not in the same way that you do because you've been doing it for 12 years. But I think it's definitely something that a lot of people, at least subconsciously, will do in their minds. All right. Well, thank you very much for sharing all your expertise and insights on how office spaces play a role in this very changing working environment. So, do you have a tip? Do you think you can give based on the conversation that we have?
I would always say to try to, as much as possible, of course, since it depends on your company, but always try to to involve people, involve ambassadors from your company within your new office concept. Think about people and putting them in the middle, in the center of what you're doing. And by doing that, you will have, in the end, they have the feeling that they are more attracted to it. They have the idea that they're more, a better feeling to coming back to the office again. So attract people and involve people in the project you are having. And then in the end, it will make up that the productivity and attractiveness of the building will be higher.
Nice one. Chris?
Yeah, I think if you are a listener or a viewer right now and you think, okay, I get inspired by this, just reach out to Wesley or me, and we have a lot of reference customers that we can contact you, put in contact with, so that you can just talk to them. I said, hey, can you share with me what were your thoughts at the time? What did you do? How did you handle it? Because it gives you comfort. It's always nice if you can see someone who did it before you, so that you can learn from their efforts and what they've done, from the good ones and the bad ones, so to be better. Because it's not that you are the only one who has these thoughts for, hey, I have to change and I want to have an ROI, because half of the world is doing that at the moment. So if you want to go there and you want to have some examples, just let us know. We'll bring you in contact with some customers just to hear their experience.
Nice. And my tip would be to gather data. I think I've learned that a lot today.
Very important.
Very important. Having data, make sure that you don't fall into assumptions and that you can have a targeted conversation and ask the right questions instead of just having assumptions. So gather data, the good data.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the GoBright Vodcast. This week we talked with Wesley about the ROI of a smart working environment. See you next time.